All right, hello everybody. Welcome to episode 26 of the Don't Be Ridiculous podcast. It is Saturday, almost 5 p.m. Eastern time.
Yeah,
Got the big game tomorrow.
the big game.
The big game. So it's kind of
Just a side note on the big game. There's been, I feel like I've seen some different things, either read some things or seen some stuff on TV. I don't know about you, but I'm kind of done with the whole Super Bowl party thing. I don't know. I just want to watch the game. I just want to, like, literally, people are like, you just want to sit at home. And I was listening to Dan Patrick, and he's like saying he was talking to his wife, and she's like, "Are you going to go to a party?" He's like, "Are we going to have a party?" He goes, "God, no." No, I just want to sit there, have some tequila, have a cigar, and just watch the game. I don't want, somebody talking to me or whatever. It's like, and I'm like, yeah, you know what? Maybe I'm just getting older, but I'm just like, no, man, I just want to sit and watch the game. And people are like, well, what do you think about the halftime show? I don't care. What do you think about the commercials? The commercials haven't been interesting in 20 years. I don't care.
well, sometimes they're funny, but you have to watch them anyway. It's not like the commercials are
Yeah.
it's not like the commercials are a sideshow that you have to go someplace else to watch them. You're going to watch them anyway. So no, I agree with you. People suck, and I honestly, I just want to enjoy the game for the game. This is one of my.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say, did you listen to Levitard this week? Levitard and Stugatz this week.
A little bit.
Okay. They played a clip. I think it was from yesterday's show. Alshon Jeffrey, who was a receiver for the Eagles, remember when they beat the Patriots? Yep. And there was a clip they were playing of him, like he was being interviewed on Super Bowl week, and someone was like, "Don't you think this is kind of fun? Having all these celebrities here and stuff." And Alshon Jeffrey, the most honest interview you'll ever hear, he's like, "Yeah, man, I don't really care about any of this crap. I think this is all BS. I wish we could just fly in on Friday or Saturday and then just play the game, man. This is a football game. I don't really like." I'm like, yeah, I really don't. You know what? I mean, and you think about it, basically, like the whole Radio Row thing, where they just basically have other players going in and selling stuff, and it's just really stupid. Anyway.
Well, I mean, look, I get the economics. Okay, this is the most,
but it's just like I don't find it interesting.
Yeah, no. Listen, I get people. It's a big content creation thing for people, and I totally understand that. If we were doing our podcast from the Super Bowl, like we'd be reveling in it.
I guess that's a good point.
But no, that doesn't mean I'm going to consume all of it. It's one of those things. It's a big deal. I mean, just like I was telling you earlier this week, just by contrast, okay, we had 110 million people in the United States watch the Super Bowl last year. If you include the rest of the world, you add on another 30 to 50 million. Okay, so it could be in excess of 150 million people throughout the world watching this one game. Okay, by contrast, an average of 12 million people watch the NBA Finals. 12.
Yeah,
that's how big the gap is. The NFL is its own thing. It's not a sport anymore. It's something else. And so, this is like a big picture take that I'm not going to go into now.
Well, it's like we were talking about. I don't know if we talked about this on the last podcast about the Pro Bowl. How like everybody complains about it, yet it drew. What was? Did you? It got like
7 million people.
Yeah, 7 million people watch the. I mean, I think a lot of that's got to be gambling. But I mean, what? Like, what that's just everybody's hopelessly addicted to football. It's just.
Yeah, so this is one of the things that on Future Pod we're going to talk about when I do a little more research on it, is this addiction to football. And you can say it's because of gambling if you want, but
it's a variety of things. That's part of it. Fantasy football, gambling. I don't know. It's just like I don't get it. I don't know what you pin it on that it's so ridiculously popular. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah. All right. So the main topic that we want to get into, the one that we'll
get back to the Super Bowl in a little bit.
Right. That's just entirely fascinating to me. So we had the NBA trade deadline, and we had some blockbusters, some stuff that we were not prepared for. I thought, honestly, beginning of the week, I thought, it's not going to be that big a deal. I
thought it was hilarious because, like, the day before the trade deadline, Woj, was saying he wasn't hearing anything about the Sixers and the Nets talking. And Brian Windhorst was saying, oh, yeah, they're talking. They've been talking. And I was like, well, what's, so I was like, I don't think anything's going to happen because I just didn't, like, why would you, trade for Ben Simmons? But,
Yeah, it never made any sense. So I just want to get some stuff out of the way first. Before we take a gigantic dump on it, which is what's going to happen here. I just want to say that, as far as both teams got value here, okay? It would be like if you were having a garage sale.
The Nets Sixers trade?
Yes, the Nets Sixers trade, excuse me. The Harden Simmons trade. Both teams, Brooklyn and Philadelphia, they got good value because they were things they were going to lose anyway. So it's like you did about as if when you're in the situation, right, where you've just got to get rid of something, it's like if you had a garage sale and somebody brings you something that is valuable to you, it's not valuable to,
well, yeah, I honestly, that's good that you started with that because I wanted to make sure we made that point because yes, I can see benefits for both teams in this trade and I understand why they did it. Okay. Right. We'll get into later on, like, the reaction people are having to it and why I think we kind of agree that some of it's a little bit, what are you guys talking about? But yeah.
Right. Yeah. So look, I mean, let's just start with Brooklyn, right? James Harden doesn't want to be there, and you're faced with the prospect
for nothing. So get something for
right. You're facing the prospect of having to pay him a contract extension or he's just going to walk. And so, you're like, okay, let's try to get something for him. And from Philly's perspective, Ben Simmons, in my opinion, you couldn't bring Ben Simmons back to Philadelphia. You just couldn't. After all that's gone on there, so it would be a disaster to try to play him. Now, if they were in a different market like New Orleans or Charlotte or Oklahoma City, it would be fine. You could probably play him. But in Philadelphia, it's just people have made up their minds that this is one of these times where the fans actually do make a big difference and have a say because you can't go back to it. So for them to be able, this is the best possible trade that anybody could have imagined for Ben Simmons.
Yeah.
To get a guy who has won the MVP before, is a perennial all-star, So yeah, I just wanted to start with that. Like in terms of just value, yeah, they did just fine. Now, when we start talking about basketball, and so this is
predicting who we think is a favorite or who's not and who's still in the title contention, that's where things get murky. That's where I've heard a lot of stuff this week where I'm like, what the hell are you guys talking about?
Right. When we talk about basketball fit or, athletes and all that stuff. And listen, this is the prism that I look at this through, okay? What's going to happen in a playoff series?
Yes.
This is how this needs to be looked at. Okay. We can't just get into, we'll do this in the regular season and their rotation will be this. All that stuff's irrelevant. Okay. Brooklyn and Philadelphia are not in this to get a good record and maybe make the playoffs. Yeah. These teams are trying to win the championship. So when I look at your team and look at the moves you make, I'm going to look at it in a 7-game series in the playoffs. What are you going to do?
The other team gets to focus on your team and only your team and start figuring out your weaknesses and attacking your weaknesses and making the game tougher on you. Because that's what happens in the playoffs. You can't just be getting transition baskets and, that doesn't happen. It becomes more of a half-court game where you need to be able to get stops. You need to be able to get buckets against tough defense. So, yeah, it's a totally different game.
Yeah, so, I thought this was a terrible idea from the beginning because I don't see, I think there are the negatives I think there just are huge negatives. And I think the way that these teams are constructed, these are problems that are going to be really difficult to solve. So
with Brooklyn especially, it's like, you're like, well, Simmons is such a good defender. He is a good defender. That's there's proof of that. And in terms of him being in transition and the fact that he's 6'10" and he can, attack the basket. Okay. Yeah, that's fair. But, in a play, but then it becomes, well, who's your who are your 5 guys, on the floor in crunch time? Keeping in mind that New York City still has the vaccine mandate, and Kyrie Irving cannot play in the home games. Okay, he can only play in the road games. So, at most you're playing, he's playing 3 or 4 games out of a 7-game series. Okay, so it's like, okay, fine. Well, we'll have Durant and Kyrie on the floor at the same time. Okay, that makes sense. What are you going to do on defense? We'll have Simmons on defense. Okay, but he's an offensive liability because he doesn't shoot. And then you're going to put Seth Curry and Patty. Okay, so now you don't have very much size, and you have defensive liabilities all over the court, including Kyrie Irving, Seth Curry, and Patty Mills. He's a smaller player, so it's just, So it's like people are like, oh yeah, well he can do this, and I'm like, well, what about that? What about in crunch time? Ben Simmons couldn't play in crunch time in the playoffs last year. Doc Rivers wouldn't put him out there because he's such an offensive liability, and he's clogging up the floor. He's screwing up all the spacing.
Yeah. So yeah, let's go over the Brooklyn perspective on this first, because this, I think, is the worst. If we're going to declare a winner and a loser, to me, the Brooklyn got, they got the worst end of this deal, whatever that end is. Right. Yeah, I agree with you. This is, let's just start with Ben Simmons. He hasn't played the whole season.
Yeah.
So he's not going to be ready to play right away anyway, not to mention the fact that Durant is still out and Kyrie can't play home games. And they've lost 10 games in a row, I think.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So in the short term, yeah, this is a bit of a problem. But, yeah, I don't, I understand, okay, they got Simmons for Harden, blah, blah, blah. But this team, to me, this team doesn't fit together. They just don't. They got Seth Curry in the deal, which is a nice pickup. But Seth Curry and Kyrie Irving don't play defense.
Yeah.
They can't guard anybody. Okay? Yeah. And then you're putting out, the big guys that they have are, they got LaMarcus Aldridge, who's getting close to my age.
Yeah.
And then you've got, they still have Blake Griffin, right? And you've got, and then you've got Nick Claxton, and, you've got a bunch of just kind of stuff on this team. And they're like, oh, and so I don't understand. I'm completely lost at the people saying, well, this is a good fit for Simmons, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, why is it a good fit for him? Because anytime he's been depended on to do stuff, like when the whole time in Philadelphia, when you depend on him to have to get stuff done, what happens is what happens in the playoffs the last few years.
Yeah.
Ben Simmons hasn't gotten any better since 2018. He's the same guy.
Yep.
So what there no team's going to guard him when you're on offense, you're playing 4-on-5 because nobody's going to guard him. Right? So it's like, oh, he's a great distributor. It's like, okay, well, that's great when you can run fast breaks and he gets to grab the ball out of the basket and run downhill.
Then I hear people saying, well, why doesn't he play like Giannis? Okay, hang on a second here. Okay. Giannis is a tremendous, he's not a great shooter, but he is a tremendous offensive player. Okay. And and also Giannis is just, I don't know Ben Simmons, so I don't want to get into, but Giannis is a very, very ultra competitive athlete who basically just goes out there every game and works his ass off to try to win the game. Whatever he's got to do to win the game. Okay. Ben Simmons is not like that. Okay. So if Giannis plays the way that he does, it works because he's going to get after. He's going to get after on defense. He's going to make the right passes. He'll attack the basket. He can just get through people basically because he's got his athleticism and his size. Okay, Ben Simmons isn't going to do that. Like what, So that doesn't. And the other thing is that I just want to point out that I think people just weren't getting this. Okay. The idea of the Brooklyn Nets, okay, because first of all, when it was just Durant and Kyrie, I didn't think they were a championship contender because Kyrie's going to get hurt and then it's whatever. But when they got Harden, it's like, okay, if you have the 3 of them, throw out all the analytics, throw out the, culture and fit and whatever else. Okay. In the NBA, if you have that much talent and they play up to their level, you just overwhelm the other teams with talent. It may take you 6 or 7 games to win a series, but you'll most likely win if you have those 3 guys. Okay. So people are like, oh, well, move Harden for what? Okay, now you got Simmons and you got other pieces. Guys, that doesn't work with the way this team is constructed. You're not going to be able to overwhelm people with your talent. So you're not a championship contender anymore. Besides the fact that people are like, oh, well, we'll get Kyrie to play in the road games. You're assuming he won't get hurt. He always gets hurt in the playoffs. So
I think this idea that Brooklyn now, they really, help their team and they really, yes, they got value for the trade. There's no disputing that. Yes, they did get some value for the trade.
I understand the reason why they did the trade, but we also have to look at this with our eyes open and go, how do we actually think this is going to play out on the court, especially in the playoffs?
Yeah, I don't see this working, in any form or fashion. And I agree with you. There's no way to me. I mean, they weren't going to win the championship anyway, the way it was going, but I think they sealed it now. They're not winning the title now. And if Durant takes 2 or 3 weeks to come back, they might not make the playoffs.
If they're losing, they might miss the playoffs. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So all these people are like, I want to see him play in the playoffs. Okay, I don't know if that's going to happen because they might not make it.
Right. So let's spin this the other way. So your best case. So what you're trying to tell me is if you're telling me to believe in Brooklyn, right? They're going to fall down into the 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 range as far as seeding goes. Okay. They might have to play in the play-in. So that means they're going to have to play 3 tough series. They're not going to get the first series where it's against some lesser than team that they can just sweep easily. They're going to have to play the best teams in the conference right away when Kyrie Irving can't play half the games. And you want me to tell you that, they're better now because they got Simmons.
Yeah.
I just don't, I don't buy into that at all. Now, I will give you the caveat here, okay? If New York lifts the restrictions and Kyrie's playing every game now, okay, that changes it a little bit. I still don't think they're winning the championship, no matter what happens.
Well, remember, I was like last year, I started to think Brooklyn could win it all when they got Harden, because then I'm like, because Harden didn't really have an injury history up until the last couple of years. So I was like, okay, if you have him and Durant and Kyrie, you get what you get because he usually gets hurt. I was like, okay, fine. But it's still like, even if Kyrie plays all the games, he's gotten hurt in the playoffs 5 or 6 times. I mean, so it's just like, and then also it's like, we're just going to play the best teams and just roll. It's like, you're going to have to beat the 1 seed like right away, like a 1 seed, like say the 1 seed is, Miami, or I don't know, if it was Cleveland, then it's like, okay, those guys don't really have a lot of experience, but that team kind of fits together. They've been playing together the whole year. They kind of know what the hell they're doing. Brooklyn's kind of trying to figure it out, and we don't know if Steve Nash is a good coach.
Well, and it's a lot of heavy lifting for 2 guys, right?
Yeah.
If you're gonna, right? So let's just look at some other models of this, right? The Lakers with LeBron and Anthony Davis, right? Those 2 guys are physically built different. They can do everything on the court. They can shoot, they can defend, they can guard the rim, they can run the plays, they can do everything on the court that you need them to do. When you've got, Kevin Durant, who's, he's a big guy, but he's not a big guy in terms of, I'm protecting the rim. He's pretty good for a guy, that's, pretty slight to be able to play defense like that. It's great. But Kyrie Irving is a small guard, doesn't really impact the game on defense, and if he's not scoring, he's pretty much useless.
Yeah.
So it makes it's a lot to put on those 2 guys. And last year we saw it with the 3 of them. They all broke down.
Yeah.
So that means, and in the games where Kyrie can't play, Durant's going to have to play 40, 45 minutes.
Yeah.
In these games, because what do you have? Who's your number 2?
Yeah, exactly.
You don't have a guy you can just give the ball to and go, hey, get me a bucket. Because Ben Simmons isn't going to do that. Seth Curry doesn't play that way. That's not how they're built. So I think we need to step into reality on Ben Simmons a little bit. I've heard this argument the whole past year well, just, he'd be a perfect fit on Golden State or Portland. If he can play like, he can play like Draymond Green. He can be the guy who plays defense against the big guys, and then, he runs the plays on offense. First of all, that is highly insulting to Ben Simmons and Draymond Green, okay? We're not giving Draymond Green the credit he deserves for being the great defensive player that he is, not only in terms of guarding people one-on-one, but team-wise. He's guarding multiple people, switching off pick and rolls, doing all these things he does. And then on offense...
He's a Hall of Famer.
Right. And then on offense, he's making big decisions on pick and rolls. He's doing all this stuff. So,
and he's not a great shooter, but he will shoot.
Right. Yeah, he is a threat to score. So, yeah, it's like we're now asking way too much. It's like we see Ben Simmons as like this guy that we can make him whatever we want. It's like he's in our imagination now, to where we want to create this Magic Johnson type, guy who can just do all this stuff. But
dude, what are we, 5 years into his career?
Right. And it's not that Ben Simmons doesn't have a lot of talent and isn't a good player. He is. This isn't a indictment of Ben Simmons' career, but he can't be your third best player when you're trying to win the championship, or your second best player. That's not how he's built. He's a good role player. Like I think Ben Simmons could be really successful in the NBA if he's on the right team.
Yeah.
But the problem is he's paid like he's a max player, but he's not a max player.
Yeah, no, he's not even close. Yeah.
So when you're in that kind of situation, it makes it difficult on the rest of your roster. And it would be one thing if, he's just kind of lazy, doesn't work on his game as much as he should. But if he's properly motivated, he will. No, he flat out refuses to work on his game. So why do people keep telling me he's going to be this big guy who can do all this stuff, and they're going to have him play center? And like, okay, you can tell me that. So like I told you on the phone earlier, we've got to stop telling me what you think Ben Simmons can do and start telling me what he will do.
Yeah.
Because we know, he's really talented. He's really capable of all these things, but he's never shown that he's going to do that. And we've seen him in the playoffs, and we've seen what happens.
Well, and just like, I'm not saying when you're 5 years into your career, there's obviously still room to grow, but you reach a point where you have to kind of start saying, this is kind of what this guy is. And just to give you an example, like LeBron 5 years into his career wasn't a great shooter, but he became a great shooter, 5 or 6 years later after working on it all the time. Until finally the 2013 finals, he's hitting threes and he's hitting jump shots. Okay.
And listen, here's the thing. Maybe 4 or 5 years from now, Ben Simmons will be able to do more stuff, and he'll have a more complete game and all that stuff. Brooklyn doesn't have that kind of time. They're trying to win the title now. So we can't wait around for you to figure out what the hell you're doing. And here's the thing, like Brooklyn, obviously, as we've seen, coddles all their players, right? They're like, you do whatever you want. Well, how has that situation worked out for Ben Simmons?
Yeah.
You're just gonna, all right, you do whatever you do, and you're just gonna allow that to. So I think I understand what Brooklyn did, because they got assets that they can now trade for stuff later.
All right. So let's talk about this from Philadelphia, and then I want to come back to Brooklyn, and then just talk about why this. Because we don't think they're going to win the championship now. Why we think this didn't work? Why their super team thing didn't work? So we'll get into that. But let's get into
all right. So look, Philadelphia. I think it's a completely different outlook. Number one, you were getting nothing from Ben Simmons before. He was useless, not playing, and you get a guy who, when he's engaged, is one of the best players in the NBA.
Yeah.
And it's not up for debate. The guy is a fantastic offensive player, and we saw what he did when he first got to Brooklyn last season. He became the point guard. He was a playmaker. He was amazing. He was in the MVP conversation for a little while last year. So I think this just comes down now. Listen, again, I didn't like this trade because I still don't I feel better about what I'm getting from James Harden, but I still
Yeah.
don't know.
Yeah. Well, second of all, remember, Harden's been basically out of shape the last 2 years. Okay. He hasn't really been, I mean, there's been times he's been engaged, there's been times he hasn't been. And also, it's just Harden tends to burn out in the playoffs. And I think maybe that's a conditioning issue. Maybe he's just not in the right kind of shape that he needs to be, or as good a shape as he could be in. And so you're telling me that he's got a history of doing that. He's now 32. Okay. LeBron, is in unbelievable shape. And then by the time he hit, 36 or whatever, he's been breaking down. He's been getting injured a lot more. Okay. But he was basically he was avoiding that because of the kind of condition he was in. So you're telling me Harden's already kind of starting to break down because he's been out of shape. So I kind of feel like there's I don't want to say there's a cliff coming, but that in addition to the rule changes, how he's had to adjust to that, not being able to get all those foul calls, which he was so good at for most of his career, so there are some legitimate concerns. Although I will say in Daryl Morey's defense, his thing is stars win championships, and that's true. In the NBA, the stars win the championships. So if you get, I mean, I guess you have to say you have to get like the top level James Harden play, plus the way Joel Embiid is playing. Okay, you got a legitimate shot to win the championship, or at least get to the finals. But there are still, there's still questions about Harden. I still, I'm a little concerned of people like, oh, well, when he's engaged, okay, well, when is that going to be? Like it's a question,
Yeah, I mean, listen, I'm not thrilled with James Harden. I don't really like watching him play, but I'm not going to be stupid and sit here and tell you he's not any good. The guy is.
Absolutely. Yeah, I don't want to. That's the thing. I don't want to jump to that extreme. I have some concerns, but I mean, if he plays like he's capable of playing, and him and Embiid, like that could be tough to beat in the Eastern Conference. So
Yeah, I think and like the opposite of Brooklyn. Like Brooklyn, I'm worried about right now.
Yeah.
In Philly, I'm less worried about right now. I'm more worried that you now got this guy in. He's 32 years old, and you're going to give him a 4 or 5 year contract.
Yeah.
That concerns me way more than they may have the chance to win the title this season and next season. So that's one of the reasons why I don't know that I would have done it. But again, when you got Ben Simmons and he's not going to play for you,
you got to do something. And
right.
Look, like I said, the NBA, sometimes we can overcomplicate it. Like you can usually simplify it. The stars win the championships. That's usually the way it goes.
Right.
And so, you don't want to, like, Embiid is having an MVP type year. You don't know how much longer he's going to stay healthy. So you got to kind of go for it right now. This was the best thing that was out there. So you go for it.
I think there's a significantly better chance that Harden and Embiid can get this to work than anything I believe from Brooklyn. So absolutely. I think Philly made a good deal. People making a big deal about them giving up Seth Curry and 2 first-round picks need to move on because that's nonsense. Like
picks are not useless, but it depends what you're trying to do. For them right now, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, I mean, to me they got the better end of the deal. I think like anybody arguing anything else, I just don't get it. Like Philly got the best player, and when he's
I don't know if you saw this, but you can always count on Skip Bayless. If you ever need a really bad take, he always delivers. I mean, it's just he delivers in clutch time. He's got that clutch gene. But he says that the Nets clearly won this trade. It was like a 50-point blowout. But like Shannon Sharp is just like, what the hell are you talking about? I mean, oh my God.
Yeah, listen, these are
get out of James Harden, and I'm just thinking, well, what the fuck am I going to get out of Ben Simmons? Like, what the fuck?
These are misfit toys, and we're trying to choose the best out of a bad bunch, But I think, but I like where Philly's at. I like where they had to do something because they've got Joel Embiid is not going to be around forever, and they've got to try to. They got to swing for the fences, and you got to give Daryl Morey credit. We all thought he was delusional, for a year, and he made a good move. But just a side note here. So James Harden, the guy who's flamed out in the playoffs, more often than just about anybody, is now being coached by Doc Rivers. The coach has blown more 3-1 leads than anybody else ever. So we'll see how this goes. But yeah, if they do well, man, those Philadelphia fans will absolutely love it. So all right, so you wanted to go back. So we're thumbs up on Philadelphia.
Well, yeah, I just kind of wanted to. I guess maybe the question is like why didn't this Brooklyn super team thing work out? Or why is it that it seemed to work out in other situations, but in this case, theirs didn't seem to work out? So, I mean, I was listening to a lot of different stuff this week. I have a few different ideas. I mean, first of all, Kyrie Irving having a sabbatical last year, you remember that?
Right.
Yeah. That didn't help because they didn't all get to play together. Him not getting vaccinated obviously didn't help. James Harden showing up out of shape 2 years in a row obviously didn't help. So, there's those things. And then the other thing that I wanted to kind of point out was, because of those things, this thing never got off the ground. I mean, I feel like if they had been able to play together more and had success, Harden might have been more engaged and he might still be there. And we might be saying the Nets should win the championship. They were 13-3 when all three of them played together, but that hardly ever happened, So, but I mean, looking at this and then looking at other super team scenarios and why things don't work, like I think people get kind of I think players get this, they have this inflated sense of, well, I can fix everything, I can make stuff work. And it doesn't always work. The only reason it'll work, for instance, Miami, why did Miami work? They went to the finals 4 years in a row. They won 2 titles. Okay. It worked because not just because LeBron, Dwayne Wade, and Chris Bosh were really good friends, but they were willing to make sacrifices to make things work. They also went to a place where it had a strong culture already, and they had a good coach, and they could figure out how to get things to work. Plus, Dwayne Wade had already won a championship. Right. It's like with Kevin Durant in Golden State. Okay. They'd already won a championship. They'd been to the finals 2 years in a row. Steve Kerr's a good coach. Steph Curry and Klay Thompson are great teammates. Draymond Green, yeah, he's a little nuts, and obviously him and Kevin Durant got into it a little bit. But look, they won 2 titles, and they would have won 3 if not for Kevin Durant tearing his Achilles tendon. Okay, but then you look at other stuff, and other stuff tends to not work because they don't have those relationships. The culture there isn't already established. I mean, Kevin Durant's just like him and Kyrie are like, all right, where do we want to play? We'll just go to Brooklyn, And Brooklyn had kind of built this nice culture. They made the playoffs. They had some good young pieces. And then they kind of, they brought those 2 in and, it was okay. And then they brought in Harden and they got rid of a bunch of those other pieces. So it's like, well, what are you falling back on? You got a brand new coach, Steve Nash, who we don't know if he's a good coach or not. And also, like you were saying earlier, they're just going to cater to the players. Well, they didn't do that in Miami. Golden State, I don't know. I don't think that there was just like let the players do whatever they want, but also they didn't have a problem with guys just doing stupid shit like taking a sabbatical in the middle of the year or not getting vaccinated so they can't play. So I just thought that was kind of interesting where people were talking about why didn't this thing get off the ground, and I think people had a lot of different reasons why, but those are just kind of a few things that I was kind of thinking of this week.
Yeah, I think it's about, getting the right guys together. Yes, you need great players, but you got to have the right great players and the right framework to get it to work. It worked in Miami because, like you said, they already had a strong culture, and those 3 guys play both ends of the floor. Yeah, And it worked for the Lakers with LeBron and Anthony Davis. It worked, and then they bring in Russell Westbrook this year, and look at that. It's not. And again, it's not Russell Westbrook's fault, but they completely changed the team that they had that had won them the championship.
Yeah, and completely throwing things out and starting over that's really difficult to do. A lot of these, like for instance, with Kobe and Shaq, did Kobe get drafted the same year that they brought in Shaq? I can't remember.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, they didn't win a championship for like 4 years. Okay, they had to figure. Kobe had to get better, and they were playing together. And then they'd go to the playoffs and they'd lose. Then finally they get the right coach, and they have that experience, all that experience together, and then they win 3 titles. So yeah, I mean, a lot of times that's kind of what you see people like with Golden State. I mean, that's because they had Klay Thompson and Draymond Green and Steph Curry, and they kind of worked. They'd been getting better and better and making the playoffs, losing in the playoffs, and then finally they win the championship. Because they had that experience together. Throwing it together like that, it's not that it can't work. I mean, the Heat almost won their first year. It's not that it can't work, but it is kind of difficult. And the players you have to be willing to do the right stuff to try to win games.
And listen, from a NBA standpoint, like, look, super teams are great for the NBA.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Either the team wins and they're fantastic because they're so talented, or they completely fall apart, and that's a great story too. So it works out either way. I don't, we'll see how this goes forward in the future, how teams are built, because we see with Brooklyn and we see with the Lakers, the way they tried to do this with the letting the players decide some of this stuff didn't work out. So. Be interesting to see how this moves forward.
That's what I wanted to make was just real quick was, when Durant decided to join up with Kyrie Irving, I think a lot of us were kind of like, dude, really? Like, okay, we'll see. And you've seen what's happened the last couple
So this is kind of one of my takeaways, like on the, Durant and Kevin Durant and LeBron James were picking all-star teams the other night, and Kevin Durant, they both basically refused to pick James Harden. So Kevin Durant would not pick James Harden. He kept making excuses. I need more size. I need this. I need that. Didn't want to talk about it at all. And then, James Harden ends up on LeBron James's team. Like, my takeaway from this is, like, does Kevin Durant have any awareness as to what's going on around him at all? Because nobody wanted to play with Kyrie Irving. Like, this wasn't like there wasn't a line out the door to go play in Brooklyn with Kyrie Irving. And it's like, you don't know this is what he's like? Yeah. Like, you've known him how long? And he played with James Harden, for 4 or 5 years in Oklahoma City. Like, you didn't know what this guy was like either? Like, do you have a clue as to what's going on? Or are you just winging it? It's just kind of, I just feel like some of these players today, like, and LeBron's like talking the Lakers into getting Russell Westbrook. It's like I feel like these guys, they get so good, they're just like, fuck it. Just give me whoever, we'll win anyway. And it's really bizarre. So it's funny I
think I made this point a few podcasts ago, like, I'm not against players moving around, and they can do that, and they can try to have influence over, the decisions that get made about building a team. But, I almost wonder if LeBron might have won more championships if he'd stayed in one spot. Well, if he'd stayed in one spot, and because what ends up happening is, like, if you look at Kobe's career, right, starts off, they can't get to the finals for a few years, then they win 3 titles, right? Then they miss the finals. Then they make the finals. They lose. They trade Shaq. He has a few lean years, and then they win 2 more titles. They're trying to win another one. They couldn't make the finals again, whatever, and it kind of flamed out. And then the rest of his career, he didn't. But if you stay in one spot, you can if it's the right spot, you can get you can get a championship window, and then you get some lean years. But then if you've got a team that can make deals and make trades or whatever, then you get maybe back to a championship window and you can win some more, but if you do this thing because if you really look at it, LeBron, like, he goes to a place and then it's in shambles and then he leaves, and then he goes somewhere else and maybe they win a championship and then it gets really bad and then he leaves, and it's kind of like, well, yeah, that tends to be what happens when you're trying to win a championship. You end up having some lean years, but if you got the right organization, you can build things back up and get a window again. And it's just kind of like trying to do this microwave thing where you win a title. It can work, but it is kind of difficult, And again, I'm not saying I'm against players moving around, and I understand some of these teams, they don't know what the fuck they're doing. So I can understand you wanting to leave, and because it's hard to find the really good situation. Yeah. But it is kind of a thing where
listen, if LeBron and Kevin Durant are okay, or they're happy with the situation that they're in, Fine, more power to you. But I don't get the Kevin Durant doing this passive aggressive thing where no, we're best friends, and then all of a sudden he doesn't want to talk about the guy anymore. It's very high school, nonsense, which is ridiculous. So, so I wanted to talk about the media reactions to this.
Okay.
I was utterly shocked, and very, in sports most of the time I kind of get it. I'm not usually very surprised, but I was unbelievably shocked at people's reaction, the media's reaction to this, especially ESPN and Stephen A. Smith and a few of these other people, that I'm just dumbfounded by it. Stephen A. Smith went off like, how could you, Philadelphia, you made Brooklyn better. You're trying to beat them. Why would you do that? And it's just like, what do you mean, why did they do it? We know why they did it. Because one guy wasn't going to play for their team anymore. So they're like, all right, let's get some value. So they did. But this idea that, they made Brooklyn exponentially better. That's what he said. They made Brooklyn exponentially better. What? It's like, all right, like, they're better. Since Kevin Durant's out, they're probably better off at least having Ben Simmons on the team. Yeah, that's one way to look at it. But I'm just blown away by that. It's like, I don't understand how they're better. Like, they just lost an MVP type player. How are they better?
Yeah. I don't, yeah. That's,
It just blows my mind. And then he killed Daryl Morey for it. It's like, this is the worst move of Daryl Morey's career. It's like, really? Like, this is just
the Russell Westbrook move was pretty bad.
Right. It's like, how is this that bad? Like, we've gone insane on this. Like, oh geez, how could they? And so I disagree with the entire assessment. It's like,
I don't get it.
I've been watching Brooklyn. How would they be better because of this? They got some more role players. Congratulations.
Well, one of the things that was kind of annoying me was a lot of people were in favor of this trade, and they didn't like Brooklyn anyway, which I just thought was weird. It's like, so you don't think they're going to win this way when it's like, no, the only way they can win is to overwhelm people with talent. And you're saying, let's get them less talented, and let's get another flawed player in here, and then we'll be better, and they'll be more of a like, really? Like, it's like, you didn't like them anyway. I just thought, like, I mean, and Colin Cowherd just, saying that he liked this trade, and he also liked Ben Simmons going to Golden State. I'm just like, what are you guys talking about? Or you just, I mean, I guess you're just trying to say something provocative, but whatever. I just thought that was ridiculous.
Yeah, and so let me get this straight. Brooklyn, who's been a dysfunctional mess the last 2 years, they've got one of their best players in and out and all over the place doing whatever he wants. They're constantly injured and banged up, and the answer for Ben Simmons' career is to go to this team.
Yeah, that doesn't make any sense.
No, Brooklyn needs solid players who have their shit together. You can't just throw Ben Simmons onto this team and go, he'll figure it out. It'll be good for him. Change of scenery, blah, blah, blah. It's like, it's not going to be good for him if it's the right culture, if it's the wrong culture. If you're just throwing him out there and say, hey, you figure it out. And by the way, it's hard to play in the NBA when it's like, all right, these two guys are going to have the ball 80% of the time.
Yeah.
Like you expect Ben Simmons to make that adjustment? Good players who've been in the league 10 years have a hard time making that adjustment.
Yes.
So yeah, the media reaction just going off the deep end about this is it baffled.
Yeah, there was a lot of. I mean, I liked Bill Simmons' podcast because I thought they did a pretty good job covering the thing from all angles and kind of saying, "Oh, I can see I like this and I like this, but also I have questions about this and I have questions about this." And I thought they overall did a good job. But yeah, there was a lot of, especially on ESPN, there was a lot of just like, what are you guys talking about?
Yeah.
So we'll see how that plays out. I mean, it gives us something to talk about. That is kind of interesting, And I for Philadelphia, look, if Harden's able to play at a good level, like they're a pretty damn good team. They can make the Eastern Conference Finals, so that could be fun. Like seeing them play like Milwaukee, that'd be cool. I'd be up for that.
Yeah, I mean, the one good thing I will say about this is it cleared up a lot of stuff now. We don't have all of these questions that are hanging over our heads. So now it's like that we've kind of reset everything. So now the playoffs, we're ready to go. So it kind of helped because, to be honest, this NBA season kind of sucked.
Yeah.
So there were a couple other trades that, which would have been huge deals if it weren't for the gigantic Harden Simmons trade that I wanted to talk about. So Dallas, the Mavericks, moved off of Porzingis, and
that gigantic contract. Yeah.
Yeah. So I go back and forth. When I initially saw it, I was like, okay, that's something, because let's face it, they were just dumping Porzingis' contract. That's what was happening. They got Spencer Dinwiddie and Davis Bertans, and those guys have been pretty disappointing this year. So I get what Dallas was doing. Was that really the best way to do that? I don't know, because they're stuck with these guys for this season, and they won't have any flexibility until 23-24. So,
okay.
So the rest of this season and next season, they're pretty much stuck with this. It does give them a little more flexibility because it's easier to trade one player that's on two players that make $18 million a year than trade one player who makes 36.
Yeah.
It's a little easier, so it gives them, hopefully some more flexibility. But this is the first of what I think are going to be many moves for them. But it's like, you almost would have been better off just dumping Porzingis for a couple of expiring contracts, and then you have cap space and you can kind of do what you want. So it's not a bad move. I don't know if it's the best move, but I really wanted that to work out. I just think Porzingis is just a different guy now. The injuries have changed him into a different player. But it's, Dallas is on the clock, man. They've got to figure out in the next couple of years what they're going to do and get some better, get another guy for Luka. They're going to have to, figure something out with this roster. They have a solid team. They're going to make the playoffs, but, that was one of those things that was just
everybody away.
Yeah, I had a lot of hope when they traded for him. I thought that was a hell of a trade when they got him, but man, it just did not work out.
They were looking for him to be a really dynamic player, and he hasn't been.
Yeah. So the Washington Wizards, they traded Dinwiddie, they traded Montrezl Harrell. So then their big move was to try to keep Bradley Beal, was to get Porzingis.
So, I guess.
I'm not sure so I don't know what the hell's going on there. Like, they were acting like they were Portland. They're just dumping people, which is just kind of strange. It's just like, what is going on? So I'm not sure, and the same thing with, Portland, it's obvious what Portland's doing. They're selling off parts, to they're going to try to make their team better in the short term, but I have a feeling that I wasn't thinking Bradley Beal was going to get traded before now, but this is going to be a very interesting offseason from those teams' perspectives, because if I'm Bradley Beal, why would I stay on this team?
I don't know.
And
loyal to that organization, so
right, and Portland, Portland dumped McCollum. They traded what was it? Not Covington. I don't know. I'm not sure what they're attempting to do. But yeah, that is so we'll see. We could have some other stars on the move. So none of the other trades really change anything as far as who's going to win the title. So
the Lakers didn't do anything, but we kind of figured there was going to be no way to move Russell Westbrook's contract.
Yeah. So the Lakers. They're really squandering it, because it's kind of funny. I was lukewarm on the Russell Westbrook thing. I thought, okay, maybe this could work, but yeah, LeBron really, they had the formula there to win the championship. They knew what it was, and they just completely went away from it.
Yeah.
Which is just kind of weird, because they could have traded Harrell and Kuzma and gotten Buddy Hield, and improved their team. They really didn't need. I don't know why. For some reason, they thought they had to just make some huge move. They really didn't have to. They had a championship team. They really didn't need to do anything. So it's just, it's very weird. I don't know. I'm not sure what's going to happen with the Lakers, because honestly, I think Russell Westbrook's been getting benched. I think he's going to get benched more and more. And honestly, what they should have done was just have Russell Westbrook come off the bench.
Yeah.
That would have been the best thing for their team. Have Westbrook out there against second units without other, LeBron and Davis out there so he can just do his thing. And, I think they just miscalculated this thing. And that may be it for them. We'll see.
I think that's pretty much it. I mean, well, maybe I shouldn't say that. I mean, I've been concerned that LeBron hasn't been able to really stay healthy. I mean, he came back after getting injured this year and he's been insanely good. So, I don't want to totally close the book on it, but I mean, they got to get out from under this Russell Westbrook thing. And then they got to get some defense. I mean, they gave up Alex Caruso. It's like really good defensive player. He can hit threes. Like,
Yeah. So. It seems like they really made a whole bunch of mistakes in a row. I mean, honestly, what they should have done was made the trade for Buddy Hield, let Taylor Horton Tucker go, re-sign Alex Caruso for the money that you would have given to Horton Tucker. That's all they had to do. They really just had to do a couple of tweaks, and that's it. They did this complete overhaul.
Well, maybe that's because Rob Pelinka was an agent and he wasn't a GM, and this is the first 3 years that he's been a GM. So I don't know.
Yeah. So all right. So some bigger questions, about the NBA moving forward. So I really like the Eastern Conference. I think it's going to be fabulous in the playoffs because it's wide open. Yep. I still like Milwaukee. What do you think?
I mean, I guess so. Yeah. Because I just like Cleveland, like they've got a nice team, but they haven't really been there before. And Miami, again, they're going to play hard. They got a nice team. I just don't think they have enough. Like, I would hope that if they played Milwaukee again, they wouldn't get completely swept out of the building like last year. I mean, depending on a lot of this depends on what the seeding is and where they end up. Because like Miami, if they're the 1 seed, you're going to play a lower seeded team, then, maybe you probably get out of the first round. And then depending on the draw in the second round, you may have a good shot of getting into the Eastern Conference Finals. But it's just kind of when you don't have like Joel Embiid's an MVP candidate, Giannis has won 2 MVPs. James Harden has won an MVP. So it's just like, getting past those 2 teams is just, I don't know. I think it's probably between those 2 teams. And given the fact that Giannis has done it already and Milwaukee, it's not like Milwaukee's some like world beating team. They just play harder, when they need to. And Giannis comes up and then, Holiday will do enough on offense. He's always doing stuff on defense, and Middleton makes shots, and they probably, I guess I would probably make them the favorites.
Yeah, I mean, but I think a whole bunch of teams have a shot, and if somebody gets injured, the whole thing could change.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think Philadelphia might have a better chance to win it next year than this year. I think they're going to have to really work some stuff out. But what's really funny about this is Brooklyn's in danger of ending up in the play-in situation.
Yeah.
So if Brooklyn were to get the 7th seed, okay, then they would have to play, and they would get the game. The first play-in game would be at home, which means Kyrie couldn't play. So they could play like Boston or Toronto or somebody like that in a play-in game and lose, and then they'd play the game at home and then lose. And then they'd have to play if they lose that game, they'd get to play another game still at home. So it would be better off for Brooklyn to get like the 10th seed, because then they get to play, Kyrie gets to play in the road games. And if they play Toronto, Kyrie can't play in either place.
Yeah.
So this could be, honestly, if there's one thing to be grateful for about Brooklyn is the high comedy that could happen out of this, because goodness. It's like, I want to feel bad for Durant, but it's like, you did this to yourself.
What was it? It's like, what do you want me to say? Like,
just moronic. But what I wanted to say about, like, I was thinking this, after all the deals went down, like, if I'm Phoenix or Golden State, like, those teams are cruising to the top 2 seeds in the West. Like, if I'm either one of those teams, I'm like, let's just keep our guys healthy. Let's give if I'm Phoenix, if I need to give Chris Paul some games off in the next month or two, let's do it because I'm looking at the East going, we can beat everybody.
Yeah.
Phoenix had Milwaukee down 2-0. Like Phoenix, a couple things go different. Phoenix is the champion. So to me, I thought, when off season, I thought, well, Phoenix, that was a great run, but they probably won't be able to do that again. Like if I'm Phoenix or Golden State,
I don't think anything of the Lakers. And then you look at the rest of it. The Clippers, well, they don't have Kawhi. The Jazz, we feel like they have kind of a ceiling, And then the rest of the teams, it's like Dallas, no. Denver, no. They don't have Jamal Murray. So yeah, those two teams, that's to me, that's if they meet in the Western Conference Finals, that's. You might be able to argue that's for the championship, but I think they should. They're in really good shape.
Yeah, if I'm either one of those teams, I'm looking at the East going, guys, let's just keep our heads down, keep going, make sure our guys are healthy. Don't be crazy because they've got a decent cushion. I mean, that is a nice situation for both those teams. I thought going into the season, I wasn't really thinking Phoenix or Golden State could pull this off. They can. This is going to be, the playoffs are going to be mighty interesting. So yeah, that's all our NBA talk. Man, that was I don't remember a trade deadline quite like this.
Yeah. Yeah, that's
So, all right. Do you want to talk about the Super Bowl, or did you?
Yeah, sure. Let's. Yeah, we'll just kind of because the Super Bowl is tomorrow. I'm trying to think. I mean, my whole thing is basically are the Bengals going to be able to prevent Joe Burrow from getting sacked, 27 times? Because they're going up against Aaron Donald and Von Miller, and it's just That's kind of my main thing. And then it's just kind of the Rams probably should win. I think they overall have the better team and the better roster, but they probably should have blown out Tampa Bay and they didn't. They probably should have been ahead of the 49ers at halftime of the NFC Championship game and they weren't. Stafford led the league in interceptions this year. So it's kind of one of those things where the Rams should win this game handily, but they might not, just because the Bengals they seem to have a lot of confidence that we'll just hang around and just try to make the plays at the end and we'll, try to get the lead. So I think the Rams are going to win, but if it's like you've been saying, if it's close late, I think I kind of like the Bengals. So, I just hope it's a good game. I'm nervous that, if the Rams get up on top of them in the first quarter, it could get ugly. So I hope that doesn't happen, but we'll see.
Yeah. I think the Rams they have the opportunity to basically slam the door on this game in the first half. They could win this game in the first half if they play really well. And they had Greg Cosell was on Colin's show, and he basically said that he thinks the Rams are going to come out aggressive, empty sets and throw the ball down the field. And they probably will. And by the way, that thing about Stafford leading the league in interceptions, he only had 17 interceptions.
Yeah.
That's not that many. So and Burrow had 14. So I find that interesting that we've turned into, yes, okay, Stafford will throw the ball to the other team, but so does Joe Burrow. Like Eli Manning would throw the ball to the other team. Every great quarterback, they throw the ball to the other team sometimes when you're trying to be aggressive, which is what you have to do to win the game. It's worth the risk. So, yeah, I think I just have a feeling, unless something happens in the first half that changes the game, I just think the Rams will keep the Bengals in it for a while.
Well, and I think basically if you're the Bengals, you need to run the ball and you need to steal some possessions. You need to get some turnovers.
Right.
And Nick Wright was being ridiculous this week. He's like, well, unless Stafford throws 3 or more interceptions, no. He could throw 1 or 2 and the Bengals could stick around, or somebody could start fumbling the ball. I mean, Cam Akers fumbled the ball like 3 times against the Bucs. So, yeah, it's one of those, but it is one of those things where I feel like the margin for error for Cincinnati is definitely smaller than it is for the Rams.
Right.
So that's why I think the Rams probably win this game.
Yeah, they're only favored by 3.5 right now. So, this is not like this game is it's a complete mismatch. It's not. It's just the advantage that the Rams have might be too overwhelming to overcome. Yeah. The Rams defensive line is just ferocious, and Cincinnati's offensive line is not good, and they're not going to get better. So it's not as if Cincinnati's going to figure something out. I think they can do some things to manage it, run the ball, get the ball out quick, keep some extra guys in to protect. They can do some things to try to mitigate it a little bit. But as we all know, these playoff games come down to 3rd and 7. They know you're going to throw. Your quarterback's got to make a play, and your offensive line has to hold up. And that's hard. That's hard to overcome. But, again, Stafford will throw the ball to the other team. It's just, do they catch it or not?
Yeah.
So, but I'm looking forward to a good game. I would really yes, it could be a blowout, but I think there's a pretty decent chance that it's a pretty competitive game going to the fourth quarter. So
that's all you really want,
Yes, so that's what I'm hoping for.
Yeah. Well, real quick, one last thing, and then because I gotta go. But this week I was just kind of. I mean, I'd been thinking of this for a few weeks, because I think we had talked about, should there be should the NFL expand at all? Right. And then I was thinking, well, what if they added 4 more teams? So you had 36 teams. So you had 18 per conference. I'm like, what if you really reorganize the divisions? Because one of the things I was thinking of, I'm like, well, this team's been in this division forever and they stink. Maybe let's put them in a different division and maybe something different will happen. So here was kind of what I did. I had the NFL expanding into 4 cities. San Antonio, Portland, San Diego. I mean, they were in San Diego before. And Portland, San Diego.
St. Louis?
St. Louis. Yeah, back to St. Louis. Okay. So I reorganized this, and I've got totally different divisions. There's 6 in each conference. There's 6 3-team divisions. Okay. So we got I'll start off with the AFC. We got the Florida division. All the Florida teams, Miami, Tampa Bay, Jacksonville. So switching conferences with one of the teams. What else? The Southern Conference, Carolina, Tennessee, and Atlanta. I tried to come up with different names for it, but the Western Conference, Vegas, Denver, and Seattle. The Erie Conference, Buffalo, Pittsburgh, and Cleveland. What else? The Atlantic Conference, Washington, Baltimore, and the Jets. And then the Southwest, the Chargers, whatever the team is in San Diego, and then Phoenix, Arizona, the Cardinals. So that's the AFC. So keeping some rivalries, but kind of, hopefully creating some new ones. Then the NFC, I had the Northeast, the Giants, the Eagles, and the Patriots, because I thought that's kind of a cool division. Have the Patriots and the Central Division, Dallas, St. Louis, and Kansas City. The Gulf of Mexico Division, Houston, New Orleans, and San Antonio. I thought that was kind of an interesting thing. The Great Lakes Division, what did I put in there? Green Bay, Minnesota, Detroit. The Pacific Division, San Francisco, the Rams, and whatever the team is in Portland. And then the Midwest Division, Cincinnati, Indianapolis, and Chicago. So, I don't know. I thought that was kind of interesting. Like, I drew a map of the United States, and then I tried to group teams together and in their specific region, And then I had some other ideas for the scheduling. I was like, okay, so you play your division, and then you play one or 2 other divisions in your same conference, and you play another division in the NFC, and then have a few times a year have rivals weekend where you play a team that's not in your division but used to be in your division, and you have a strong rivalry with the Patriots and the Jets, or the Ravens and the Steelers, or the Cowboys and 49ers, the Chiefs, the Raiders, the Denver and the Raiders, stuff, Eagles, Cowboys, Giants, kind of like college. I don't know. I thought that was kind of interesting.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Just kind of, I've always thought that they should realign more stuff because it's just weird having like, you know, the AFC East having the Dolphins and then having these teams way up north. You know.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. Yeah, I definitely think, you know, look, I mean, let's face it. We know what's coming with the NFL, right? There's going to be an 18 game season. They're going to expand to more teams. You know, I honestly, I wouldn't be against getting a team in Canada and a team in Mexico.
Yeah, I can see that. You know, Toronto or
Vancouver.
There you go. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that would be interesting. Now, you know, the only problem is we're getting cities really close together. Like, you know, when you have Seattle and Portland, and you have San Diego right next to Los Angeles. The only problem with San Diego is people didn't go to the games when they had a team. So
that's true.
So it's.
I was trying to think of what cities to do it in. I was like, well, San Diego had a team. Like,
yeah, you know, I think St. Louis is a really good choice. You know, it's in the middle of the country. I think San Antonio is a really cool idea. 3 teams in Texas. Texas is so big.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So yeah, I think. Yeah, that's an interesting idea. So then, how would the playoffs work? Would you have if you have 6 divisions, you just have all 6 division winners, and then two wild cards or something?
I was trying to think, or maybe wait a minute. Did I put? I think I was trying to figure it out. I was thinking maybe have not. Wait a minute. Have like 9 playoff teams per conference, and that way you could do. I was trying to think of. Well, I hadn't really figured that out yet. I was trying to, you know. But my thing, like, and I had a few like more just like random thoughts. I was like, let's have a postseason MVP award, and then in the regular season do a 7-minute overtime, like keep the rules the same, but only 7 minutes, and then in the Super Bowl do a 10-minute overtime period, like whoever's ahead at the end of the 10 minutes, you know, because it's the Super Bowl.
Well, you could see that 9-team thing could work, right? You could do 9 teams. You could have 3 teams with a bye.
There
right?
you go. 3.
And then no, that wouldn't work.
No. You'd have 6 left.
You'd have 6 left, and then they would all play each other. That would get you down to 3, but the 3 plus the 3 would be 6. You can't get anywhere with 6 teams in a.
Yeah, it's tough to. Yeah, that's why people are paid a lot of money to figure this out.
But yeah, no, I think you'd have to do 6 division winners, 2 wild cards. That'd be 8 total, and then you'd go from there. And if you have, you know,
yeah, well, and the thing is, if you have more divisions, I think it maybe lowers the possibility one of the division winners is going to have a really crappy record. Maybe, I don't know, maybe not.
Well, and it matters less because you only play 4 divisional games then.
Yeah.
So it's your schedule is less based on your division and more based on how you play against the other teams. So it's not a bad idea.
Yeah. So all right. Yeah, that was basically it. I mean, I was gonna I did I guess have a comment because Aaron Rodgers won the MVP and Colin Cowherd was complaining about it. Like, how small does this feel? Because he got eliminated in the playoffs, and it's like, dude, it's been a regular season award forever. Like, are we just like, I understand that we can say the postseason matters more, but the regular season still matters. Okay. Like, when you're considering guys for the Hall of Fame, yes, you're considering their playoff stuff, but a lot of it's also what they did in the regular season. Like, you know, so that's why we should have a postseason MVP award. I'm getting kind of tired of the complaining that, well, it doesn't include the playoffs. It's like, it's been that way forever. And by the way, like, what, you have a problem with Aaron Rodgers being the regular season MVP? Like, I can understand if we had a postseason MVP award and you wanted to give it to like Joe Burrow, okay, fine. I mean, you're basing it off the postseason, so I don't know. Anyway.
Yeah, no, I think I like the way hockey does it, where they have a playoffs MVP. The only downside is it just ends up pretty much being the MVP of the finals usually. But they do take more of a broad approach to it. Like in Bill Simmons' book, The Book of Basketball, he did a playoffs MVP for every year.
Okay.
So, and a finals MVP. So it was pretty interesting. But the thing is, you can't slant it to the playoffs because some teams just get further in the playoffs, and there's nothing you can do about it. But
yeah, exactly. That's again, it's one of those things. It's like with the Pro Bowl, people keep complaining about it. I'm like, what are you complaining about? Like, it is what it is. Just and it's Colin's like, oh, well, I think Joe Burrow was more the MVP during the regular season. Okay, that's an argument to be made. Fine, people could argue that about multiple other quarterbacks. Like, fine, but
I'm just glad the media didn't screw this up and not give him the award because he refused to get vaccinated. At least the media did that right, for God's sakes.
Yeah, exactly.
Anyway, all right, folks. Well, everybody enjoy the Super Bowl.
Yes.
Don't drink too much, but have a cocktail for me. And I'm rooting for the Bengals.
Yes,
I'm
so root for the underdog.
I'm not going to be upset no matter who wins. I think this is a happy Super Bowl. I'll be happy no matter who wins. We don't have
Stafford. I think it'd be great for Stafford.
Yeah, we don't have a Darth Vader team in the Super Bowl.
Yeah,
thank goodness.
No, exactly. No Tom Brady. Finally.
Yep.
Hopefully, he's not coming back.
All right. Take care, everybody.